Well, hey there. How are you, everyone? And we are here today again. It's Monday, so we're putting out new material out to reach you guys. Um, Today we have with us Angel, who is one of our fantastic volunteers. Angel is a mental health practitioner who focuses and specializes on our little kiddos. So today's goal, really, for today's broadcast is to really normalize the behaviors that you may be seeing from your kiddos at home, and then also to create the sense of calm and connection with both your kiddos as well as your families. I've heard from a lot of my coworkers, my friends, that there's some issues that you're experiencing at home. So Angel here is going to go ahead and give us suggestions, thoughts, comments, and observations about the things that we've been hearing. And we're also going to address the questions that you've been asking us today throughout the day.
Just to pause, I'm not seeing it down.
Hang on.
Let me just check with Nate and see if he's.
It looks like we may be having some issues with broadcasting. Give us just one moment. A day would not be complete without issues.
Exactly. You got to roll with it.
For a moment, we are troubleshooting and checking this. Want to make sure that everybody sees us and everybody is able to log in, and we're all good. And it looks like we are good. So, as I said before, we have Angel with us, who is our fantastic volunteer who specializes on mental health in our PDs. Angel, go.
So the goal of the event is twofold. One, I want to help give you a frame of reference for behaviors that you might be seeing. We're going to look at that through Maslow's hierarchy of needs to see why you might be noticing regress behaviors, why you might be noticing your kiddos being a little different than they were before quarantine and pandemic. That every person has a different measure of what they need to be successful and optimal functioning. Everyone has a different level of safety, love, confidence to be at peak performance. One thing that we do know that's universal to all people is when our normal way of functioning, what we're used to, is altered or challenged, it triggers fight, flight, or freeze response for individuals. And that's on a spectrum. Everyone obviously functions at different levels. So some of your kids might be functioning better than others. Some of them might be off the deep end. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and talk about how you can meet those needs and help get your kids back to optimal levels of functioning. So if Natalie is able to, we're going to put up a little graphic for you guys to see while I'm talking. Fingers crossed. And I think that she's working on it. There we go. Awesome. Thank you. So you'll see that there are 5 foundations that Maslow identified. So this compounds on one another. The baseline foundations are physiological needs and safety measures. These are the things that are basic necessities in life, things that need to be met before we can even think about any type of optimal mental health or social functioning. So we're looking at basic needs: food, shelter, safety, home, connection, things like that. Those are foundational needs that we need to have met before we can move on to things like esteem, confidence, love, creativity, belonging. So you'll see that one stage builds on top of the other. The ones that we're going to focus on today are the ones that might be a little bit displaced because of the pandemic and extended quarantine. So like I said, most of us have what is our normal level of functioning. And when that gets disrupted, it does trigger some level of fight, flight, or freeze response, which usually ends up in regress behaviors. So what we're going to do is look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is going to give you a framework to assess the needs that are currently being disrupted for your kids, to identify and implement strategies to meet those needs right where your kids are. And by doing so, we can restore a sense of calm and connection in your household, and then hopefully put some guards up in place to keep that rolling smoothly. So the first thing we're going to look at is the measures that are kind of clumped together: safety and physiological needs for kids. One of the ways that that's being disrupted right now is kids are at home. They're e-learning. They're not seeing their friends except for on social media or other platforms like Zoom and House Party, things like that. So everything that we have known to be normal up until this point is all gone, which upset some apple carts, let's be honest. Adults are having trouble with processing it. Kids are definitely having trouble with processing it. And we want to be able to restore the balance and help your kids thrive in spite of this quarantine. So one of the ways that you can do that is by building some structures, routine, predictability in every day. So one of the things that we can do is put together a written visual format for your kids to look at, whether you're using a calendar, a whiteboard, something to give them a structure for the day. We want to be able to have them refer back to that throughout the day and say, all right, if you're currently e-learning, we're going to start out with breakfast. You're going to do, one of your fun subjects to start out with, so you can get something under your belt to make you feel confident about this e-learning thing, and start your day fresh and pumped up about e-learning. And then maybe we take a break and go outside, and then we have lunch and we come back and do a harder subject. It doesn't have to be a minute-to-minute schedule, but it's good to have some form of structure for the day, an approximate wake-up time, an approximate bedtime. Keeping structure and routine helps build predictability, and predictability decreases anxiety. Anxiety is what's causing all the regression. So by putting these structures in place, you can help reduce the anxiety and increase the likelihood that your kids are going to function at more optimal levels. A written schedule, whether it's pictorial for the little kids, whether it's a calendar, a whiteboard, a to-do list, a check-off. Parents have been using lots of different structures for their kids. That will really depend on if your kid's a visual learner, if they are show and tell learners. I usually do show and tell with kids. So we show them what we want them to do as we tell them, so they have multisensory processing and can remember what they need to do throughout the day. We also like to encourage having a time of discussion, either the night before about what the schedule for tomorrow looks like, or the morning of, if you're one of those families that is fortunate enough to be able to have breakfast together and make that work. But just having an outline for what does today look like? What does my schedule look like? What does your schedule look like? When are the times that we'll be able to have interactions together? Something that they can refer back to throughout the day to see what's going on. Another necessity in this parameter is also making sure that expectations are clearly communicated for your kids. Expectations might be different now. Things that they were allowed to do previously might not be things that they can do now. And so having a list of expectations, these are the behaviors that we expect to see. Here are consequences, good and bad, for meeting those or not meeting those expectations. Now is the time to make sure that rules in the house and expectations are clearly stated, that they're consistent, predictable, and constant, especially for little kids that are anxious. If there's too much variation in that, you're going to have a lot of issues with anxiety and regress behavior. So we want to talk about ways to build that calm environment and to help promote kids' sense of safety, physiologically and emotionally at home. And the way we're going to do this, in addition to scheduling and making sure that the expectations are clear and consistent and predictable, we're going to talk about sensory soothing. Sensory soothing helps rebuild sensory regulation. These are just little tips and tools that you can use to help make sure that your home environment is calm, soothing, and able to foster a sense of safety, security, and chill mode for your kids. So we're going to go through the 5 senses and talk about some ways that you can build or create a calm, secure, regulated environment in addition to having clear regulation schedules, things like that. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the different sights that are going on in your house. What is your lighting like? Some kids are more triggered by bright lighting. If you find that your kids are getting a little bit cray-cray, you can bring down the lights, make a calm, soothing environment. You could light candles. You can change out your light bulbs to full spectrum to help emulate kind of that light that they're getting outside. Make sure that you are getting outside daily. Kids need to be outside. They need to breathe fresh air. They need to play and run and spin and do all of the developmental tasks that are important for midbrain development. And eventually that will lead to frontal lobe functioning, executive functioning. So if your kids are not getting outside time and you can build that in, please do. We also want to talk about limiting screen time. A lot of kids have gone from restricted screen time to being on the screens all the time right now. And we have noticed a lot of screen sickness for kids. They're more agitated, they're more irritable, they're acting out more impulsively, they're getting a much greater volume of blue light exposure than they were before e-learnings happened, because a lot of our parents do have good restrictive measures on game time, screen time. So making sure that for kids using e-learning as opposed to packets, have blue screen filters or the glasses for your kids. Make sure that you're breaking up that time and you're getting some outside time to balance that out. For some of the kids, we've had to switch to packets. They can't handle the extended time on the computer or a tablet, and we've noticed a significant increase in regulation with that. For a lot of us here in my area, Tampa Bay area, Florida, school's almost over. We have 1 week left, and then we can deal with building regulation through the summer. I'm not sure what it's like for the other counties that are tuning in, but it is something to think about. If your kids still have a lot of extended learning time left, you might want to check out the blue screen filters or have them switch to packets. One of the other things that we talk about with calming sites are calming jars, things that kids can look at. We make these with our kids in session, and it's something that they can use to take a brain break and practice their deep breathing. And so this might be an in-service that we do at some other time, but you can see a little bit on the thumbnail. We've got a jar that's filled with Orbeez and sequins and glitter. And what we encourage the kids to do is to take their calming jar when they're feeling frustrated and to practice their deep breathing. And they're practicing their deep breathing and saying their truth statements like, I can handle this, or this is frustrating, but I know that it will feel better. So we usually prescribe a truth statement for the kids. We come up with one that will work for them in session. And we typically make one of these in session too. And so they're doing deep breathing as they're watching this settle. The more glue that you put in, the longer it takes to settle. So usually we take about enough glue to make it a 2-minute process. So kids are shaking it up, they're breathing, and they're saying their mantra, their truth statement. And typically by the time all the glitter settles, they are settled too. So this is one of those things that the kiddos like, but believe it or not, the adults like it just as much. I've made these in my practice with all ages, and it's very soothing. So having things in your house that are soothing to look at, whether it's artwork, keeping the lights low when necessary, making sure that there's not too much blue light coming from screen time, and also making an area where your kids can go and chill. So if there's not a quiet area in the house where they can go to decompress, make a little blanket fort. Let them go inside, take some time to, bring all the stimulus down and re-regulate. Sounds are also very important in a household. If we're trying to be calm and regulated and there are things that are triggering sounds for us, maybe your kid has a fear of the garbage truck, or the vacuum is on a frequency that gets them dysregulated. We want to look and see if there are any sounds going on that are adding towards this dysregulation. I like to have neutral sounds going in the house. It could be the instrumental channel on your phone. It could be a white noise machine. It could be a fan. I currently have a fan going right here, which is great white noise because my neighbors are a little bit loud at times. So it helps me drown that out. But having sounds that help them feel calm and regulated to keep that sense of calm and regulation throughout the day. Also, if you're noticing that your kids are feeling a little bit down, then you'll want to pick some music that will help boost mood. So asking your kid, what's a song that automatically makes you feel happy or confident, and turning it on and jamming out, having a dance party. With my kids, we have stuffed animal dance party that we like to do at the end of every session right now. So my little giraffe comes and I let the child pick the song and their favorite stuffed animal, and we dance together. And it works on breathing, it works on sensory regulation, it works on left-right brain crossover. So dancing is a great triple threat, if you will, for sensory regulation. Also, when your kids are triggered, if you find that they're just spazzing out, to use a typical parent term, they're having a meltdown, we want to make sure that when you're directing them, that your voice is down. We need to stay neutral. If you are trying to direct your kids to calm down and your voice is up here, it is like adding gasoline to the fire. So we want to make sure that when we're directing them or coaching them into a calming skill or to a state of more better regulation, that we're calm and neutral as well. You might need to take a deep breath first. You might need to tell them, I'm going to take a minute and breathe, and we'll come back and talk about this. But we want to keep our tone as gentle, neutral as possible. You also want to keep directives during that time short, sweet, and simple. Maybe you need your kid to put their shoes on because y'all got to go. And they're over in the corner and they're melting down because they can't find the shoe that they want to wear. Normally, this might not be a problem, but today it is. And so just reiterating, now's the time for going. Now's the time for getting our shoes on. I can't find the shoe that I want. I know that you really want your dinosaur shoe, but now's the time for going. Here is your Paw Patrol shoe. And obviously, I'm gearing these towards younger children at the moment, but believe it or not, teenagers are having the same issues right now too. So keeping your voice calm and regulated, reiterating what you need for them to do, and doing so in a very short, simple manner will be most effective. One of the things that is a very quick way to promote or foster regulation is through our sense of smell. Sense of smell is something that can automatically trigger either a positive response or a negative response. We've all smelled something that was pretty funky, and you notice the response right away is that disgust and withdrawal, but you throw on some of your favorite scents, and the next thing you know, you're feeling peaceful and calm and regulated. For me, I like the scent of Gain. I like things that smell like clean linen. Those are the things that I have going in my house, diffused or with automatic air fresheners. Finding things that are sensory soothing for your kids. It could be lavender, it could be cookies, it could be just, honestly, it could be anything. Have a conversation with your kid about what smells make them feel peaceful, calm, safe, regulated. Let them pick out a few and have those diffusing through your house or in an automatic air freshener. And those will be going throughout the day and automatically serve to bring on that conditioned response that we like. We know that these are scents that they like. We're applying them frequently. It helps bring down their agitation and their anxiety, and helps promote neutral mood or positive mood. The other thing that we talk about is touch, the textures in your household. We want to make sure that during times of stress, kids are having access to things that they feel are soothing. It could be a weighted blanket or a fuzzy blanket. It could be squishy toys. Some kids are all about the slime right now. Some of the slime is scented, so then you have a texture and a scent at the same time that work on multi-sensory regulation. We also talk about having clothing, gear that makes you feel good, right? So the things that help your kid feel warm, snuggly, safe, cuddly could be a pair of pajamas. And maybe they want to wear these every day. If your kid's dysregulated, go ahead and let them wear the pajamas every day. It's okay because we're inside. Just make sure they get washed. They're not funky, you know. Right now, it's about comfort. It's about rebuilding that sense of safety and security. And then when it's time to go out into the public, we'll work on transitioning them out of their favorite PJs or their favorite slippers or their favorite shirt. But those things are very important right now when your kids are dysregulated. The last thing that we'll talk about is the sense of taste for sensory regulation and soothing. And so this goes one that you're going to use in moderation because it typically has to do with different foods, right? We all have comfort foods that we turn to when we're having a hard time or a bad day. It could be, you know, if you're from the South, we're all about our mac and cheese. We love it. Maybe it's ice cream, or maybe it's pasta or bread. But there's something that your kid has that's like their most favorite meal that you make when it's celebration time, that you make when it's their birthday or they've accomplished something special. Identify the things that are in that area for your child and use them sparingly to help promote comfort and calm in the house. So that is, in a nutshell, attending to those first couple sections of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Natalie, if you could put the graphic up one more time. There we go. All right, so you'll see on the graphic those first two levels, safety and physiological needs. That's what we've covered when we're talking about schedules, when we talk about sensory soothing in the home, when we talk about open communication and predictability. Those kind of things are going to bring down the anxiety. Also, your way of functioning and interacting with your kids will also promote safety and security. So just your very interaction with them will attend to those needs. So those are chunked together, those first two sections. The next two that we're going to go over have to do with love and belonging and the esteem categories. These have been disrupted recently due to extended quarantine. The places where kids are usually having these needs met are no longer available to them. And so we're going to talk about these, and when you've attended to all four of those is when we get to the peak of the pyramid. So when all those needs are being met effectively, that's when we can have self-actualization, which goes into healthy moral compass, creativity, executive functioning, and problem solving, all of those things that we want for our kids and ourselves. But we can't even focus on those until those first four levels are met. So this next section we're going to talk about is attending to love, belonging, and self-esteem. So many of your kiddos are feeling really disconnected right now. They're at a loss socially and emotionally, and this is totally normal. They feel disconnected from you, they're scared, they are not seeing their friends the way they used to, they're not going to school, all the things that made them and their I, those tasks that they do every day, those behaviors, those interactions tie into how they look at themselves. So all of those things are now mixed up. And so what we're noticing is that kids are on a roller coaster of emotions. And it's not linear, it's circular. So one minute your kid might be excited and confident, the next minute they're feeling bored and lonely, or they're feeling scared. One minute they're cool as a cucumber about the fact that you work at the hospital, and the next minute they're freaking out because they're thinking, oh no, my parent might get sick. This is totally normal. This is what we're noticing from kids across the region. You know, kids are experiencing this, whether you're a parent working in healthcare, whether you're a parent working outside the home. I have kids experiencing this with parents working inside the home. You know, all of a sudden they're scared because mom had to go get groceries, and what if she gets COVID-19? And so helping address these fears and allowing your kids to feel them is very important. I know that in the medical community, we like to solve, we like to fix. And a lot of times we jump in trying to solve or fix the problem. But first, we need to acknowledge the feeling and let your kids know that it is totally normal and it's okay. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be lonely. It's okay to feel frustrated or annoyed. It's okay to feel okay. You don't always have to be dysregulated during pandemic. Some kids are doing okay, and that's okay too. But during this time, if your kids are dysregulated, if you're noticing that they've had regressed behaviors and emotions, make sure to give them tons of affirmation and encouragement. And this can be the times when it's most difficult to do that, because when your kids are exhibiting behaviors that are trying your last nerve, it is really hard to think of something good to say. But this is when they need to hear it the most. And so you want to make sure that you're giving them a safe space to talk about their feelings, to know that it's okay to feel hard feelings, difficult feelings, that you're right there with them. Um, and then talk about that together. Express when you have hard feelings as well. I feel scared about this too. However, this is what I do to feel better. These are the precautions that I'm taking, or these are the ways that we're staying safe at home. So you can acknowledge that feeling and then talk about how you are personally coping with it, and then brainstorm some ways for your child to cope with that as well. So opening that avenue of a communication is going to be really integral to helping make sure that your kids' need for love, belonging, and esteem is met at home. Then extending to their peer group. We want to make sure that these needs are met at home first, and then secondary and the peer group. And here are some ways to rebuild that sense of connection with your kiddos. Virtual meetups are better than no meetups, but we know that they're not really filling that void for the kids. That sense of connection still feels lacking. So some simple tweaks that you guys can make to help virtual connection feel a little more concrete, a little more personal, are the following. One is to prescribe a shared activity. So whoever your kids are friends with, whoever they want to Zoom or house party or meet up with virtually, have a project that they're all working on collectively. It could be a mosaic that they all make a part of, and then they plan to get together after quarantine and put it together. It could be a painting with a twist kind of project where everyone's got this, the supplies to make a certain painting or an art type activity. Excuse me. It could be anything, honestly, creating a story together, anything where they're working communally and they have something that they can hold in their hands and they're not just looking at a screen. So we're looking at having them work on something concrete, something analog to go along with the digital meetup. Another way to add activity to these virtual meetups for kids, you can create a scavenger hunt for each kid to do while they're on the meetup. So you read off the first item, every kid goes to find it, and then comes back to share what they found that meets that criteria. And then they can talk about what they found, and was it easy to find, or did they have to look a little longer than their friends to find that? You can also do a really popular activity right now is painting rocks. So having each of your kids and their friends paint rocks and then hide them in known areas for their friends to find. So you can be out and about in a socially distant manner looking for these art projects or these rocks or whatever kids want to hide for each other, like geocaching. You can be out looking for these, and then they can talk about what they found on their next meetup. The little kids have been enjoying virtual story time. So we have been hosting groups where each week we'd read a different kid's favorite book. And so they would come with their snack and their blankie and their stuffed animal, and we would read their favorite book and talk about that. And so they have something concrete, once again, that they're holding on to, that they can feel a little more connected. And so the kids will be talking about the same thing at the same time. So we're building a guided interaction as opposed to just putting them in front of the screen and saying, okay, talk to your friends. Younger kids need more help with that. Older kids sometimes need more help with that too. We can also do show and tell for the younger kids. We could have virtual puppet shows where each kid brings their own puppet or makes their own puppet, and you can guide them through a story. So they're interacting, and it's all in conjunction with what the other person has said. So they're listening, they're waiting their turn, they're interacting, they're following the storyline. For older kids, now that some of the safer at home restrictions have lifted, they've been able to go out and do socially distant meetups. So meeting at a park, bringing a picnic, staying 6 feet away because they can understand the reasons for that and adhere to that. So a lot of kids have been doing that to have that sense of connection and closeness. Those things will reintegrate as we're able to, and make sure that we are talking to our kids about the safety precautions when we start reintegrating into society. But when you're meeting these 4 levels of needs, that's when we're going to get to the point where your kids are back to optimal functioning. So it's important to take this graphic, if possible, look at where your kids are functioning right now, look at areas that might be disrupted, and then brainstorm some ways to meet those needs. Ask your kids, how would you like to experience this? Some of them are old enough to tell you, what do I need to feel safe? Well, I need to know when you're coming home, or I need to know what your schedule looks like. So for older kids, they can talk to you about this, and you can meet these needs together in a cooperative way, which also helps build relationship. With the younger kids, you're going to have to, put on your sleuthing hat a little bit and do some detective work and see what seems to connect for them. This is very much a trial and error process for many kids. And remember, there's no cookie cutter way to meet these needs, because what works one day might not meet their need the next day. And so having a toolkit of ideas to try, making sure that you're not leaning on just one thing. Maybe your kid likes a Frosty, but a Frosty can't be the go-to every day. So making sure that you're meeting multiple needs in multiple areas to build a sense of calm and connection in your home. So that concludes the education or informative portion of this live event. We are now going to go into some questions that have been submitted through Facebook. And I'll do brief consultation on these questions. And then as people are submitting things live, hopefully we'll get to yours as well. If not, we can definitely attend to those at our next live event.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. A lot of things that you said, actually, it's funny. I know that we're talking about kiddos, right? And we're talking about first responders and healthcare professionals, but a lot of this thing to us as well, because it's like I'm listening to you talking about little kiddo, that goes through all the like ups and downs throughout the day, right? I can
Right.
tell you, I barely got out of bed today, was extremely, extremely sluggish, then went into a whole anxiety process, then everything was fine again, then it went into fear, what's going to happen if COVID overtakes, and it goes up and down even for us. So it's kind of interesting. There's
Yeah,
lots of
it's
parallels.
totally normal, And one of the things that I want to reiterate too is that for some kids, this process of quarantine has not been a bad thing. For our really socially anxious kids, this time of cocooning and being at home with their families has been very restorative for them. They've had time of one-on-one contact that they're not normally getting because parents have had to stay home. So if your kid's not struggling, that's okay too. Not everyone is. Or there might be the roller coaster, the ups and downs of my kid's struggling today and now they're not, or they were doing fine. What the heck happened? That is normal. There's a spectrum of reactions to what's going on. And so that pertains to adults just as well as kids. We have the same kind of fight, flight, freeze response. And when that happens, we're all in brainstem, which is why we do the breathing and the sensory soothing, so we can get back up to frontal lobe and executive functioning. So these things that are good for your kiddos are good for adults too.
And I think also to piggyback on that, they may be fine right now. They're just maybe not fine quite yet, meaning it's still gonna come, right? That's another thing too. It depends on how fast or how slow you process things, and everybody processes things in their own different level.
Yeah, things trigger at different times for kids. Like I said, I had one little whose mom has been able to work from home this whole time. The only time she goes out is to get groceries. For 8 weeks, that has been okay. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't okay anymore. And, very clingy and crying and needing extra reassurance. And that's okay. It just processed differently for him on a different time span. So you might think that we're smooth sailing and then boom, but that's okay. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It just means that your kids process at different speeds, and that's why we provide this education, so you can help address that and know what's going on when it happens and not panic.
Yeah, thank you very much for that perspective. I thoroughly appreciate it. Let's go ahead and address a few questions that we've had. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Um, Let me go ahead and read them quickly to you because we put it up earlier
Mhm.
throughout the week asking people for questions in terms of what are they currently experiencing with their kiddos. And we got some responses, got some really, really good responses. And for future, as we will be repeating these live events, I want to encourage you guys to submit more questions going forward, and we'll be able to address them kind of as we go.
Yeah.
And we will be putting out the schedule going forward. So one of the questions that came in was that I'm quarantined after being gone for a month. I'm going to wear a mask at home until test results come back. How do I make this fun instead of scary for my 2 and a 4-year-old? And I'm
Yes.
sure that's a common thing too.
Right. Um, for this type of circumstance, focusing on safety measures are important. These are the things that we do to stay safe at home. Excuse me. And then turning it into something fun like decorating the mask. Have them make a cover, so obviously she's going to use a specific kind of mask to help quarantine, but making something, having her kids help make something to wear over it. That's an art project that they can see, we're helping mom be safe at home, and normalizing that. For right now, we're wearing our masks and we're doing it so we can stay safe at home. And then when I get test results back, we'll take mask off, and just having it be very concrete, matter of fact, neutral. It just kind of is what it is, and making that a normalized thing for their family. Kids will pick up on our emotions. So if we're scared, they're going to be scared. If we treat it like it's no big whoop, they're going to be the same because they're 2 and 4. So they're going to really take their cue from mom. And so I would turn it into, mask of the day, or, a different one for every day, and have handprints and, glitter and however they want to, decorate it up. And they can make the mask a fun thing. And they could even wear theirs too. They could practice, when we go out, we have to wear masks. Let's practice keeping ours on and not moving it for 1 hour or 30 minutes or whatever to gradually break them in. Because at some point we will be going back out into society and needing to do so safely.
Nice. It's almost like face painting, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Great.
everyone wants their mask to, coordinate with their outfit. So she can have lots of vintage designs by her children to wear on top of probably her N95 or whatever she's going to be wearing at home.
That's fantastic. Like Mardi Gras, right?
Yeah.
Fabulous. I love it. Thank you. That's a great suggestion for sure. Next question. My 4-year-old has behaviors and he consistently yells no and even hit me sometimes. He's getting autistic. He's being evaluated for autism, but they are not working fast. What would you suggest for that?
Right. That is one of the frustrating things. Trying to get evals can take a little longer than we want, especially because a lot of times we wait till we're past that point of, holding on. And it's like, we really need help now. We've waited too long. We're frustrated. We can't take it anymore. But some different strategies that we can use in this circumstance. First of all, using the sensory soothing, going back to that, making sure that these things in the household are either sensory soothing or sensory neutral will be very important. And then also giving the child choices when appropriate and possible. No is a trigger for many kids. And so if we give them a choice of 2 things that are okay with us and they get to choose one of them, they have some sense of control, and it helps bring down anxiety on their part, and they're also complying with what we need them to do. Most kids that are very controlling do tend to have high levels of anxiety, and that's how they're meeting that need. If we decide what's going to happen, then it's predictable to us and we're not triggered by it. And so a lot of kids will have an idea in their head of how things should be or what was supposed to happen next, and when it doesn't meet that expectation, it triggers them. And a lot of times that anxiety comes out in forms of anger through verbal aggression or physical aggression with hands, feet, teeth, those kind of things. With that age range, in addition to giving choices when possible, try not to say no per se. When we say now is the time, I want to play with Play-Doh. Now is the time for eating our dinner. I know that Play-Doh is so much fun. Now is the time for eating dinner, and just repeating that as a directive. And so we're not using the trigger no as of yet. Eventually we'll build into no, we'll make no okay. But for right now, it's more about regulation and safety. Also, giving a replacement behavior. If your child is hitting you, you can say, I'm not for hitting, but you can hit the pillow and direct their hand to that instead. So if we're going to take away one behavior, it's going to be replaced with something. You might want to choose what it is. And so giving that choice right away, I am not for hitting, or gentle hands and feet. You can hit the pillow. I see that you're angry. Identifying the feeling is going to be important, giving them that vocabulary. You're angry because you want to play with Play-Doh. Now is the time for eating, so keeping it short, sweet, simple, giving choices when you can, redirecting in a neutral manner, and giving a replacement behavior. And these are all things that eventually, I'm assuming this mom, hopefully, if you're listening out there, that you're going to be able to find a behavior therapist, or ABA behavior therapy is often the first move for kids on the spectrum, but then also a clinical therapist that specializes in play-based or experiential therapy to help with that as well. And they will be able to guide you through the process and give you some suggestions for safety at home as well.
Thank you so much, Angel. Again, it sounds like all of these things applying to our spouses as well, potentially.
Replacement behaviors are great, right?
Fantastic. Thank you. One of the things that was addressed is loneliness, depression, and whining in children.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that's not uncommon right now. I'm guessing a lot of parents are seeing that in their kiddos right now.
Yes. Once again, when you're seeing those things, name the behavior, name the feeling. I can see that you're feeling restless because of X, Y, or Z, depending on how old your kid is. If they're younger, you might not want to tie the specific reason why, but you can just label the feeling. If they're double digits and older, you can say, I can tell that you're bored. You're pacing all over the house. How we can fix that together. But it is normal for kids to feel disconnected right now. Acknowledge the feeling, normalize that it's okay, and then engage in some problem solving together. Let's talk about some ways that we can fix that. I know for a lot of parents, whining is a huge trigger, but whining typically happens when our vocabulary is not working. So helping them label the feeling, label what's going on. I can tell that you're feeling lonely. I can tell that you're feeling maybe rejected or abandoned or whatever it is. Some kids thought they had friends and now they're not keeping in touch. So the people that were friends at school might not necessarily be as close as what the other person thought. So it could be that they're experiencing some feelings of abandonment and rejection, and helping them name that, normalize it, and then talk about ways to solve that. Could be virtual meetups, could be more quality time at home with a parent to help with that.
Those are all fantastic suggestions. Thank you. Somebody else said that they have the opposite problem. Their youngest and the only one that was left at home has Asperger's. He's okay to be alone at home, but we physically seek out opportunities to socialize him in situations he likes. Going out to eat, the zoo, some of the summer festivals, everything's closed down and the festivals have been canceled.
Yeah. So all of his outlets are now gone. And so they're looking for a replacement socialization. One of the things that they can look into is in their area, look for autism services or support services in their area. They typically do autism meetups per age, and a lot of those are transitioning to virtual meetups. Like I said, virtual meetups are not as good as in person, obviously, but it's better than not having anything at all. Or, if they know of friends that he's interacted with in the past, setting up some activities. He's going to need help with that social interaction. So guiding an activity like we talked about, doing an art project or talking about Pokemon or whatever his interest is, finding other people that have that same interest, and then guiding a social interaction through a meetup program. Hey, there you are.
Hi. Excellent, thank you. So one more. stating that mine is the only one. She's desperately needing to see other kids. Electric form of communication are helpful, but they get old quickly. She's also teaching herself sixth grade, and she only has the text capability with her teachers on Esteem. I'm guessing it's some sort of a portal.
Right.
If she wasn't a smart girl, she would be doomed. I work days, my husband work nights, my mom cannot help, and she's totally confused by Etsy platform and not tech savvy enough. My daughter is 100% on her own with school for most part until I get a day off to make sure she isn't missing things. It's extremely stressful for her. She's sick and depressed. She's scared having two parents who work in healthcare. and because her dad is also working in the emergency department.
Well, there's a couple of different factors here. One is the school piece. And what we've been stressing for families with children right now is that your children are not going to learn any new skill sets right now in the midst of pandemic and a total change in life schedule and functioning. We're not going to focus on learning new skills. We're going to focus on not losing what we've already gained. And so putting that into perspective and letting them know, just do the best that you can. The things that you miss right now, it's okay. The teachers are planning. They've already got, plans in place to help kids get where they need to be next year. So letting them know, just do your best. Turn in what you can. Do your best. We love you no matter what comes out on the report card, you know, um, and then work on skill sets that are important for education and academic growth, like reading. You're never going to go wrong by having your kid read. If they're little, they can practice handwriting. You can do it in a fun way and put like shaving cream down on the table and have them practice their letters, or do cooperative reading where you read a page and they read a page. So not only is it some academic learning time, but also bonding time with one-on-one contact with a parent. So that piece, we're really encouraging parents not to stress. Do the best that you can, but don't stress over it. We know that, kids are not in a place to learn new skill sets right now. Teachers know that. We all know it. They have to give work. Just do the best you can with it and try not to stress over it. The second part that she had mentioned was feeling disconnected from her peer group, feeling lonely, feeling isolated. And that's where I take it back to having those prearranged social meetups with an objective in mind, where they're doing concrete, tactile activities in the midst of socializing. So it feels more like real connection. And then lastly, she talked about the fear that she's having with both of her parents working in healthcare. And my first piece of encouragement here would be to own that. It's okay for her to be scared. We're scared sometimes too. It's normal for you to be scared one day and maybe not the next day. It's normal to have mixed feelings about what's going on. It's normal to be mad that we're in healthcare. It's normal to resent that we are going to work and your other friends' parents are staying home. Like, there are all kinds of feelings that are attached to this, and they're all normal and they're all okay. Allow her time to just own those feelings and then talk about ways to feel better. So what are some coping skills that she can use to address that? Reminding her the ways that you're working to stay safe, the policies and procedures that the hospitals have in place to make sure that you're staying safe. Deep breathing. You could do some yoga together and work on stress management. You could turn on some music and dance it out. But anything that will help to bring down those levels of anxiety. And we always start with deep breathing, and then we go from there into our other strategies, whether it's a kinetic strategy of moving, music and dancing, whether it's blowing bubbles to practice breath work, whether it's making a calming jar to focus our energy on something that's soothing and creative. Engage in an activity together. That way she knows that you guys are in this together and you're practicing healthy coping as a team.
Thank you for those ideas. Those are fantastic. I have one last question.
Okay.
The statement was virtual schooling it is. Excess energy and inability to get out. Video games, too much of it. Lack of friend interaction, and inability to have graduation.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple things there. excess energy, kids with, you know, that already have issues with focus, sustained focus, organization, functioning, typical ADHD type symptoms. You're going to need to break up the virtual school lessons and have lots of outside running, getting energy out time. It's very difficult for them to be stagnant and have sustained learning. You can have, you can put one of those beanbag cushions on their chair so they can constantly shifting, and that helps get out some of that kinetic energy while they're learning. But for the most part, you're going to have to build in lots of breaks because there's a very different brain component in effect doing this kind of learning as opposed to a multisensory processing experience in a classroom where they're getting feedback from people in person that can help with focus and attention. So that's the first part of that. Remind me of the second part, Natalie.
The second part was the graduation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When life doesn't work out the way we want it to, we are disappointed. That is normal. One of the ways that I encourage kids to handle that disappointment is by making an alternative plan. So we're not doing graduation like you expected, but here's some ideas of what we can do. Here's what we can do now. Here's what we can delay and do later. How can we make this feel like a celebration for you, even though you're missing these kind of milestones that you normally would have had? And a lot of that will depend on your kid and their personality and what they need to feel like it has been appropriately honored. Some kids are like, no big whoop, I don't want to go anyways. Other kids are, you know, down in the dumps, they're missing it. A lot of it just depends on your child, but have the conversation and make a plan, you know, make a short-term plan and a long-term plan. What can we do now to celebrate? And then what would you like to do later once the stay-at-home restrictions have been lifted?
Those are fantastic ideas. And again, I think those apply to us as well, right? Not just our kids.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, normally my husband and I, we just celebrated 9 years together, right? Normally we would be in the mountains. That's our thing. You know, we'll go into the mountains, we'll celebrate. That didn't happen this year, not right now. So we have a delayed plan. You know, maybe we can't go right now when we want to, but we hopefully go in the fall. And if we can't go in the fall, then we'll go in the winter, you know, but having plans to address those needs. It's normal to be disappointed. It's normal to want to have these things, the normal everyday things that we used to do. It's okay to miss them. It's normal to miss them. It's okay to own that and feel frustrated, but also to balance that with an attitude of gratitude. So what can I be thankful for right now? And what can I plan to help balance out that disappointment?
Thank you. It's a very valid point. It's really, we make a choice every single day. We
Yes,
decide to either fall down or fall up every
exactly.
single moment of every single day. Thank you so very much for your insight and your wisdom when it comes to kiddos. You have such an amazing amount of knowledge and understanding into their little brains. And these kiddos are the center of our attention, right?
Yeah.
So thank you so very much for that insight. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? We don't have any other questions going forward, but was there anything that you wanted to leave our viewers with?
I would like to encourage everyone to practice the same kind of grace and acceptance and self-love that you have for others to your own self and your situations at home. You know, when you're talking with a coworker about things, you would encourage them and try to help them, you know, balance out the doom and gloom and see the positive. And so a lot of times that's very hard for us to do in our own lives. And so having some mercy and grace for what's going on in your own home and know that this is normal. We all struggle. We all have times that we're strong, but we all have times when, you know, we struggle with daily functioning, and that's okay. You don't have to be superhuman to be super, you know? So my encouragement is to practice grace and compassion and support for your little ones, for yourself, and for your community. And I think that is how we're going to get through this thriving and stronger than what we went into it.
Thank you so much, Angel. Your words are so wise. We're super grateful for having you on air. And again, thank you for taking the time. Please, for whoever is viewing this, send us more questions. If you have any topics that you would like us to discuss, that you would like Angel to discuss, that you would like us to bring up, email us, send us a message, find us on all the social media networks, go to our website. There are plenty of ways to get a hold of us. And again, thank you. And I hope you have a fantastic day today.
Thank you. Go play with your kids, people. You'll be glad you did.
Bye. Thank you,
Have a good
Angel.
night.